Manx Radio's update.
Fastamai, good evening. This is Manx Radio's update. I'm Christian Jones and welcome along to a 30-minute look at everything you need to know, news, travel, sport and the likes here on the Isle of Man. On the way for you, the Treasury Minister explains why he'll be asking Tynwald to approve an additional £20 million for the health service, despite it only overspending by £15.8 million. What's happening with the Newson site in Douglas, and there's an uplift to the number of cruise ships penned to visit the Isle of Man this summer. Of course, if you want to comment on anything you hear, please do get in touch. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. It's approaching 1 minute past 5. Let's join Siobhan Fletcher now for the latest news headlines. Fastamai, Siobhan.
Fastamai. The Treasury Minister has admitted taking £20 million from the island's reserves to cover overspending in health is not something he relishes. Alex Allinson will ask Tynwald to approve a supplementary vote at this month's sitting, increasing the Department of Health and Social Care's budget for the current financial year. He says the winter months can put extra strain on finances.
Obviously, we know that January and February can be difficult times in terms of the health of our community.
A Ramsey MHK says he wants to ensure there isn't a postcode lottery for service provision on the island. Laurie Hooper has come under fire from some authorities on the Isle of Man after proposing a new clause in the local amendment bill. Negotiations are still ongoing between the government and a potential developer for the Newson site in Douglas. Kell Properties spent 5 years trying to secure planning permission before giving up last April. But Chief Minister Alfred Cannon says discussions are continuing.
Nuisance on a quay remains a huge frustration. I'm desperately disappointed, along with many, many other people, that we are unable to allow this developer to get on and develop.
And there's been a small rise in the number of cruise ships booked to visit Manx ports this summer. A total of 54 vessels are expected, with the first on the 26th of April, when Silver Endeavour is due to stop at the Calf of Man. Further afield, 3 people have been convicted of spying for Russia as part of a huge espionage ring based out of a Norfolk guest house. Eurostar's confirmed it'll resume services between London and Paris in the morning after an unexploded World War II bomb was uncovered near tracks in France. And supplies of bananas should soon return to normal after some shoppers complained about empty shelves in supermarkets this week. It's understood Tesco and M&S were affected by delays to a ship transporting the fruit to the UK. There are your headlines. We'll be back with your news at 6.
Thanks for that, Siobhan. Now let's take a look at the weather, brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Overcast with some outbreaks of rain or drizzle, especially over higher ground where it will remain foggy before lifting overnight. Light to moderate east or southeast wind and a minimum temperature of 8 degrees Celsius. Dry tomorrow though, with patchy clouds in the morning and bright or sunny intervals. The best of the sunny spells in the afternoon. Moderate locally fresh southeast wind and a maximum temperature of 13 degrees Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock, often fitted within a week. Furnitureland for 3-piece suites, dining and living room furniture, and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Making life easier with Manx Mobility at the top of Summer Hill. Are you looking for a stair lift? Look no further with Which Magazine's #1 recommended stair lifts. Now provided by Manx Mobility. Access BDD stair lifts. Call us today on 200 680. The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
4 minutes past 5 here on Manx Radio, and the Treasury Minister says he doesn't relish taking £20 million out of the island's reserves to fund overspending in health. Alex Allinson will ask Tynwald to approve a supplementary vote at this month's sitting to cover the increased cost of the island's health services. Sean Cowper has asked Dr Allinson why the figure is higher than Manx Care's forecast overspend of £15.8 million.
The supplementary bid is for up to 20 million, because we're hoping that they will come in less than that. But as we get towards the end of the financial year, there are some extra costs and some extra risks in terms of tertiary referrals and also some high-value costs that we need to deal with.
You've touched on it there, but the 20 million, it is more than the forecast overspend. So is it potentially going to be a worst-case scenario, the 20 million?
This is. It's also a realistic scenario because, and that's why often you come in for supplementary bids towards the end of the financial year when you know what the real exposure is going to be. They were forecasting around about a £15 million overspend running into the end of the year. Obviously, we know that January and February can be difficult times in terms of the health of our community and put extra stresses on the department. So now we've got a better estimate of what's happening. But I think in terms of healthcare, we know that one patient starting on a new drugs can cost up to £100,000. A patient being flown across for specialist care can be several £100,000. And so this is producing a financial envelope to cover all those costs as we go towards the end of March. And then obviously Tynwald has agreed a new budget for Manx Care going in from the 1st of April for next year. And we will be working with them to make sure that is sufficient for them to continue to provide the services we need.
Now, this 20 million, if approved, it will come from the general reserve. We heard a lot about the reserves during the budget recently. Yep. How big an issue is that to be taking more money from the reserves?
It's not something I relish, but when we structure the budgets each year, we have various contingency funds, and we've been using those for various unexpected overspends or inflationary pressures that we've seen right across government. But I think this again shows the importance for government to make sure that we have a balanced budget, to make sure that all departments, not just health, but all departments stick to their budgets going forward. But it is quite difficult when you've got some organisations like Manx Care who really touch almost everyone on the island and provide a huge array of services, often at a significant cost.
Treasury Minister Alex Allinson speaking to Sean Cowper there. Now, negotiations are said to be ongoing between the government and a potential developer of the Newson site in Douglas. Cal Properties had spent 5 years trying to get permission for its plans before giving up in April last year. The warehouse, which dates back to the 1700s, is thought to be one of the last remaining buildings of that era on North Quay. Chief Minister Alfred Cannon says talks are still happening between the two parties.
If you look around Douglas at the moment, there's two major developments going on, one down by Lake Road, one down at Villiers Square. We're going to see some significant buildings going up there, and that's down to the Island Infrastructure Scheme and the actions this government's taken to start developing our brownfield sites. I hope that in the next 3 to 6 months, we'll see progress on another central site in Douglas. So when we come to the end of this administration, if these buildings aren't built by then, they will certainly be well on the way up. And I think the construction industry can look forward to a very bright future in the centre of Douglas. We're building more houses, and nuisance on the quay remains a huge frustration. I'm desperately disappointed, along with many, many other people, that we are unable to allow this developer, Cal Properties, to get on and develop nuisance. There are negotiations ongoing between Environment, Food and Agriculture, effectively the department that looks after the planning system, and the developers team. I hope they can come to a solution. Something has to happen down there, because actually not only is it openly a blight and eyesore, but clearly the buildings are just continuing to deteriorate. And if you come from the other side of the quay and look in, you can see how much damage is being done there, and okay. I hope we can reach a solution.
And a quick word, subject to Manx Development Corporation, are you happy with the progress made?
In some respects, I think the Manx Development Corporation could do more, and we are working within government to try and get more central understanding of departments' land and property, and how we can more effectively release areas of land and property that are not being utilised. But government's also got this, or departments have this need to plan strategically as well into the future. And there has been a reluctance to release land. But look, we're moving forward to try and bring progress. That's part of our efficiencies program, is to look at our properties, how we're managing those, and what and how we can better apply strategic planning to release some of these sites that are potentially holding the island back and holding development opportunities back.
Chief Minister Alfred Cannon speaking there, and Kell Properties has confirmed the talks, but says it won't take on any further developments on the island until the planning says is, in its words, sorted out.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The Department for Enterprise says it has applied for the Red Arrows to attend TT 2025. Siobhan Fletcher joins us now, and Siobhan, at this stage though, the Isle of Man doesn't appear on the aerobatic team's provisional schedule.
That's right, the Red Arrows have been a regular highlight of TT Fortnight for decades, with last year's display taking place over Douglas Bay on Friday the 7th of June. They usually appear on Senior Race Day. But in the schedule published, which went online earlier today, the island is not listed.
So does that mean they won't be coming?
Not necessarily. The Department for Enterprise has put in the request, but it seems no decision has been confirmed yet. We've asked them for more details and we'll update you as soon as we know more.
So it seems we'll have to wait a little longer before we can know for certain if we can expect hundreds of people to descend on Douglas Head on the day then. We'll keep you posted with more information when we receive it. Thank you for that, Siobhan. 11 minutes past 5 now. And could proposed new laws be a severe restriction on freedom of speech? There's just over a week left to respond to a call for evidence on the Safe Access Zones and Protected Public Places Bill, which is designed to protect care and research workers from intimidation. But some are voicing concerns over the impact it'll have on free speech and the right to protest, with one holding a public talk on the issue this week. Reporter Barry Redfern has been looking at the bill and why some are objecting to it.
What do we want? Climate action! When do we want it?
Public protests are part of free speech, but should they be allowed if they hinder people going to work or if people feel intimidated by them? That's the feeling of Dr. Michelle Haywood, who's moving this private member's bill. To give it its full title, it's the Safe Access Zones and Protected Public Places Bill 2024. It's designed to protect people using care and research facilities from intimidation by banning protesters from these areas if need be.
My contention is you can protest, but come and protest against the people who make the laws and people who can amend the laws and people who can change laws if they're wrongs. And that's Tynwald. If people are accessing health and social care services, they are by very definition vulnerable at that point. More vulnerable than they would be if they were just walking down Strand Street going shopping, because they're in a position where they need some service and they've chosen to have that service. And at that point, I am firmly of the opinion that that is not the place to protest.
However, Peter Murcott, a retired law lecturer, has been casting a critical eye over the bill and is far from happy about it.
The safe access zones would be established by the Department of Health. It isn't specific, except that it would be a place where certain medical services or information or counselling were offered. So it could be anywhere on the island. It isn't linked to anyone. And the places, according to the bill, have to be anonymised. And so we have what I might call semi-secret legislation.
And he's not the only one with concerns about the bill. During the second reading, some MHKs also had doubts. One of those with fears was Julie Edge, MHK for Onken.
My aim really was to adjourn it because it's significant in my opinion. We have done a safe zone previously with the bill going through, and that again was a private member's bill and the abortion bill. However, this goes steps far beyond what I would expect for our island, and we are the Isle of Man. We don't have to follow the UK's legislation and what they do.
Now, following the second reading, there's a call for evidence and views, and that means your views.
Barry Redfern reporting there, and as he mentions, the call for your views closes next Sunday. That's the 16th of March. You can find a link to the questionnaire at manxradio.com. Now, should where you live on the Isle of Man impact on the services you can access? It's a question that Ramsey MHK has been asking after introducing a new clause to the local government amendment bill. Laurie Hooper's efforts have come under fire, though, from some local authorities, but he maintains the bill is not a particularly contentious piece of legislation. Here he defends some of those claims.
The one clause that I brought through that was supported by the Keys would allow the government, with Tynwald approval, after consultation, to basically mandate or require that local authorities provided certain services. Now, it also allows the government to set minimum standards, again, with Tynwald approval. But those powers actually already exist in law, so the DOI already has the power to set minimum standards for all sorts of things, so that isn't a new invention. The bit that's new in the clause would actually allow Tynwald to be able to say, well, that thing that currently you may provide, we're now saying you must provide it. So lots of services local authorities provide because they're required to by law. You have to do a certain thing. Other services local authorities provide because the law allows them to if they want to, which is why you get a disparity. So Ramsey provides a library, but Bride doesn't. That's essentially it. What this clause would do is actually enable the government, or Tynwald rather, to say, actually, everyone should have access to a library. And by and large, we don't really mind how you do that. So some of you may want to provide a library yourself, like Ramsey does. Other authorities might decide, well, actually, that's a lot for us. We're only quite small. Maybe we'll just contribute to someone else's library. Or maybe we'll contribute to the family library or the mobile library. At the minute, that doesn't happen. This kind of optional service provision is why you get a lot of differences depending on where you live. And it's why some areas have a lot more services than others. Now, I'm not suggesting for a minute that Tynwald is going to go mad and start mandating that every local authority has to provide everything. That would be insane. But it does raise the question that actually, should where you live impact on the level of services you receive? And the answer to that is probably not, actually. You should all be receiving a very similar level of service everywhere. And again, the law as it stands allows the government through Tynwald to set minimum standards. And that would be arrived at through consultation and engagement. It's not a surprise that quite a lot of local authorities don't like the idea. But ultimately, the safeguards that are built into the clause require things like consultation with engagement authorities. They require Tynwald approval for any of this stuff. And so the strongest safeguards that are possible are built in to the clause already. There isn't really much more that you can do.
Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper speaking there. 16 minutes past 5 now. Let's take a look at the travel.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
On the roads, as far as we know, there's nothing major to be aware of right now. Of course, there are those temporary traffic lights on Lord Street, which could cause some delays. Something to be aware of next week, though, there'll be temporary speed restrictions on several key routes to facilitate TT preparation work and routine highway maintenance. So that's Monday, sections of the A1 Douglas to Peel Road, A3 Ballacrane to Ramsey Road, and the A18 Mountain Road will be subject to a 40-mile-per-hour limit, and that work will be taking place through till early May. So something to keep an eye on if you regularly use any of those routes. If there is anything you spot while you're out and about, of course, do give us a text as long as it's safe to do so. 166 177 is our number, or email studio@manxradio.com. Let's take a look at the airport, and the 4:50 Dublin flight is delayed until 7:05. That looks as though the arrival, it's because of the arrival, which is also delayed, so definitely check that one out if you are expecting someone or expecting to be travelling to Dublin. Over at the steam packet though, no issues at all sailings running as planned.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
Now, Lezayre Commissioners met last night to discuss some of the issues facing the parish. On its agenda, the Local Government Amendment Bill, as we've just heard, the Northern Civic Community site, its website, and items from the former Selby Woolen Mills. Local Democracy reporter Emma Draper was at the meeting.
Lezayre Commissioners has agreed to write to the Department of Infrastructure Minister Michelle Haywood to say it's against the Local Government Amendment Bill. Clerk Lynn Smith told the Commissioners other boards don't think that the proposed legislation is in the best interest of local authorities. She also said there will be a consultation into the suggestion of sanctions being included in the bill. Commissioner Carl Brew said there didn't seem to be any sanctions on the Department of Infrastructure if it's not carrying out its own functions to that standard. He said if the department is supposed to replace or fix something in 24 hours, who has the ability to sanction it? Mr Brew added if it becomes a daily sanction, it could bankrupt a small local authority. The board agreed it would be prudent to reply to the minister before the elections take place. Also on the agenda was an update about the Northern Civic Community site. Chair Julian Tier said there was a lot of effort being put in to try and keep the site open, and the situation is a team effort between the 7 local authorities on the Joint Committee. The Commissioner's representative, Carl Brew, said there were things going on in the background, but he is hopeful of a resolution that suits everybody. But he said if it was to close, the next set of committee members would have to get their heads together to work something out. Mr Brew also confirmed that the Department of Infrastructure is supporting the joint board. A letter was sent to the commissioners from the daughter of the owner of the former Sulby Woolen Mills, asking if the commissioners would like some items. The clerk said they would be best kept in the store cupboard and would go and see what things would be able to be kept at the commissioner's office. The board unanimously agreed to this. Their commissioners will next meet on Thursday the 3rd of April.
20 minutes past 5 now.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
There's been a small rise in the number of cruise ships booked to visit Manx ports this summer. A total of 54 vessels are expected. Sean Cowper has the details.
The first of the visiting ships is expected on the 26th of April when Silver Endeavour is due to stop at the Calf of Man. It'll be one of 6 vessels stopping at the Calf this year. Douglas welcomes its first cruise passengers of the year on the 2nd of May when Renaissance, an 1100 capacity ship, will anchor in the bay. The Manx capital will host the majority of those booked to visit this year, with 43 ships expected in the port. New Statendam returns to the island for a third straight year. With a capacity of 2,666, it will be the largest vessel visiting the island in 2025. Its first of 4 visits is scheduled for the 12th of May. Peel will see 5 visits, including 3 from Hebridean Princess, which with a capacity of just 50 passengers is the smallest ship booked this year. The cruise season will draw to a close on the 21st of September, with 2 visits in Douglas from World Voyager and Hamburg. The 54 vessels have a total capacity of just over 30,500 passengers, a small rise on 2024 when 52 ships carrying up to 27,000 were scheduled.
Sean Cowper with that report there. And efforts are ongoing to bring everyone together to work as one to make women and girls football on the island a success. This week saw the Isle of Man Football Association host an inter-school girls football tournament which saw 25 primary school teams taking part. Darren Timpson went along to find out more.
I'm here at the ball and normally we're here for the Ravens, but today it's all about girls football. Every year the FA hosts an inter-school tournament for primary school girls, and this year's has been organised to line up with International Women's Day. I spoke to the organiser of the event, the Women and Girls Development Officer for the FA, Jamie Lee Ferns, who said the women's game has grown more than people might think.
One of the main things that I want to work on from now and going forward as part of that 5-year plan is to really come together as a whole. So we're moving forward from the FA, from the clubs, parents, spectators, the players, everybody coming together and moving forward so that in 5 years' time we are an island of girls, like women and girls football, not just it being pushed from certain clubs or like from the FA. So yeah, my 5-year plan is really for us to come together and work as one.
Anna Shaw from Cronkyberry says more girls are now choosing football over other sports.
So good to see the youth, the girls coming through. I mean, I think there's 23 teams here today. It's so important as they grow up, to have this amount of players coming through the ranks. And obviously, if they're going to carry on like this as they get through to teenagers, then it'll just help the women's game massively. There's a lot more clubs on offer for girls to play, more competitions. There's just more influencers now, especially with everything that's going on professionally. Girls it's more accessible, it's easier, and it's, even coming down today, it's just amazing to see the amount of girls, and the quality is brilliant. So yeah, it's definitely improved, and it's just really nice to see.
Balakotia teacher David Partington says events like these are needed to grow the women's and girls' game.
It's absolutely brilliant to have an all-day event for the girls that parallels the boys' event.
Charlotte plays for Onken and the island, and she told me what her favourite sport is.
I like tournaments because you can play and represent your team, because it's more fun and there's lots of different clubs on the island. We play 4 times a week and sometimes matches on Sunday, so it's a big commitment.
Do you play any other sports?
I play badminton and I do a bit of dance.
Which one do you prefer?
Football.
Darren Timpson there, and Darren joins us live in the studio now with the latest sport. Faster, my Darren, what can you tell us?
Good evening. Starting with football and FC Isle of Man, the Ravens are set to take on Squires Gate tomorrow at the Ball in the North West Counties Football League. The Manx side lost last time out the way to Burscough and will need to get a win this weekend if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. They face a run of 8 games in a row at home until the end of the season, but sit 10th in the league and 12 points off the playoff spots. However, Paul Jones says the side needs to focus on each game at a time.
One of the things we've all been guilty of is looking at the league table this season and looking at games as must-win games, whereas for a long time we've been looking at just how can we improve as a group. And if we can come back to that and really just focus on ourselves and not worry about what other results are happening and not worrying about this as being must-win games or needing to win to stay in touch with the playoffs or to win the league, which we maybe got carried away with halfway through the season. That'll set us in good stead. We just need to focus on ourselves, focus on what we're good at, and keep trying to deliver that more consistently. And if we can do that, then the results will come. And it also helps players deal with expectation and pressure. If we're not worrying about the outcome and we're more focused on the processes required to deliver a consistent performance. And we feel like we've got a lot better at that this season. We're not conceding as many goals. We're not losing games by more than one goal very often. There's lots of things that have improved, but admittedly they're not yet improved sufficiently to really be at the sharp end of the table. So that's what we need to do over the next 8 games. We're playing teams that are fighting for their life. So some might look at the fixtures that we've got coming up as easy games, but they're probably the easier games at this stage of the season are the teams that are more in the mid-table who are not playing for anything. That we're playing against 4 or 5 teams who are fighting for their life to stay in the division. So they're tough games where we've got to be very much on our mettle to make sure that we get the results. But it's most important of all that we focus on our performances and focus on ourselves and making sure that we can be much more consistent over the full 95 minutes.
Ravens boss Paul Jones. Locally, the FA Cup quarter-finals will be taking place this weekend. Ayr will face Laxey, Ramsey travel to Russian, Foxdale host Colby, and Union Mills will play St Mary's. In the Canada Life Premier League, Corinthians will be looking to reclaim second place in the table when they face Moran. Peel, meanwhile, will be looking to get back to winning ways since the start of February and add to their advantage at the top. In rugby, both Douglas and Vagabonds are on the road this weekend. Douglas will face Crewe in the new Regional 2 North West and will be hoping to pick up some points. Their hosts sit bottom of the table and Douglas won the reverse fixture on the island. Vaggers, meanwhile, will face Ormskirk in the Counties 3 ADM Lancs-Cheshire. And in hockey, Ladies Premier League leaders Carterton A face Vikings A, and in the Men's Premier League, Backers A will play Harlequins A.
Thank you for that, Darren. Well, that is all from Update this evening. Coming up next is Friday Sport with Ben Cunningham, who's sitting in for Rob Pritchard this week. Then Chris Kinley will be along with Greatest Hits for your Friday evening. Sweet and Swing with Howard Kane from 9. And then, of course, Nicola Holt with the 90s playlist from 10. Beth SB will be back with you on Update next week. So until next time, take care. Bye-bye for now.